His Neighbour's Wife by Ruskin Bond. No, said Arun as we waited for the dinner to be prepared. No, I did not fall in love with my neighbor's wife. It is not that kind of story. Mind you, Leela was the most attractive woman. She was not beautiful or pretty. She was handsome. Hers was the firm athletic body of 16-year-old boy, free of any surplus flesh. She bathed morning and evening, oiling herself well so that her skin glowed golden brown in the winter sunshine. Her lips were often colored with panju, but the teeth were perfect. I was her junior by about 5 years, and she called me her younger brother. Her husband, who was 40 to her 32, was an official in the customs and exercise department, an extrovert, a hard-drinking, backslapping man who spent a great deal of time on tours. Leela knew that he was not always faithful to her during these frequent absences, but she found solace in her own loyalty and in the well-being of her one child, a boy called Chandu. I did not care for the baby. He had been spoiled and took great delight to disturbing me whenever I was at work. He entered my room uninvited, knocked my books about, and if guests were present, made insulting remarks about them to their faces. Leela, during her lonely evenings, would often ask me to sit on her veranda and talk to her. The day's work done, she would relax with hookah. Smoking hookah was a habit she had brought up with her from her village near Agra, and it was a habit she refused to give it up. She liked to talk, and as I was a good listener, she soon grew very fond of me. The fact that I was 26-year-old and still a bachelor never failed to astonish her. It was not long before she took upon herself the responsibility for getting me married. I found it useless to protest. She did not believe me when I told her that I could not afford to marry and that I preferred bachelorhood's life. A wife, she insisted, was an asset to any man. A wife reduces expense. Where did I eat? At a hotel, of course. Then that cost me at least 60 rupees per month, even on a vegetarian diet. But if I had simple, homely wife to do the cookings, we could both eat well for less than that. Leela fingered my shirt, observing that button was missing and that collar was frayed. She remarked on my pale face and general look of debility and told me that I would often fall victim to all kinds of disease if I did not find someone to look after me. What I needed, she declared between the puffs at the hookah, was a woman, a young, healthy, buxom woman, preferably from the village near Agra. If I could find someone like you, I said slyly, I was not getting married. She appeared neither flattered nor offended by my remark. Don't marry an older woman, she advised me. Never take a wife who is more experienced in the many ways than you are. You just leave it to me. I will find a suitable bride for you. To please Leela, I agreed to this arrangement, thinking she would not take it too seriously. But 2 days later, when she suggested that I accompany her to a certain district's home for an orphan girls, I became alarmed and I refused to have anything to with her project. Don't you have confidence in me? She asked. You said you like a girl who resembled me, and I know someone who looked just as I did 10 years ago. I like you as you are now, I said, not as you were 10 years ago. Of course, we shall arrange to see the girl first. You don't understand? I protested. It's not feel that I have to be in love with someone before marrying her. I know you would choose a fine girl, and I would really prefer someone who is homely and simple to an MA with honors in psychology. It's just that I'm not ready for it. I want another year or two of freedom. I don't want to be chained down. To be frank, I don't want the responsibility. A little responsibility will make you a man, said Leela, but she did not insist on accompanying her to an orphanage, and the matter was allowed for rest for few days. I was beginning to hope that Leela had reconciled herself to allowing one man to remain single in the world full of husbands, when one morning she accosted me on the veranda with an open newspaper, which she thrust in the front of my nose. There, she said, what do you think of that? I did it to surprise you? She had certainly succeeded in surprising me. Her henna-stained forefinger rested on an advertisement in the matrimonial columns. Bachelor, journalist, age 25, seeks attractive young woman, well-versed in the household wife duties, caste, religion, no bar, dowry optional. I must admit that Leela had made a good job. In a few days, the replies began to come in, usually from the parents of the girl concerned. Each applicant wanted to know how much I was earning, and at the same time, they took the trouble to list their own connections and the high position occupied by their relatives. Some parents enclosed their daughter photographs. They were very good photographs, though there had been a certain amount of touching up. I studied the picture with interest. Perhaps marriage was such a bad idea after all. I selected the photograph of 3 girls and I most fancied and showed them to Leela. To my surprise, she disapproved all of 3. One of the girls, she said, had a face like hermaphrodite, and another obviously suffered from tuberculosis, and the third was undoubtedly adventurous. Leela decided that whole idea of advertisement had been a mistake. She was sorry she had inserted it. The only replies were likely to get from fortune hunters, and I had no fortune. So, we destroyed the letters. I tried to keep them some of the photographs, but Leela tore them up too. And so, for some time, there was no more attempt to getting me married. And Leela and I met nearly every day, but we spoke of other things. Sometimes in the evening, she would make me sit on the charpai opposite her, and then she would draw her hookah and tell me the stories about her village and her family. I getting used to the boy too, and evening growing rather found him. All this came to an end when Leela's husband went and got himself killed. He was shot by a bootlegger who decided to get rid of excisemen rather than pay him a sum of money. It meant that Leela had to give up her quarters and return to her village near Agra. She waited until the boys' school's term had finished, and then she packed their things and bought the 2-ticket third class to the Agra. Something I could see had been troubling her. When I saw her off at the station, I realized what it was. She was having a fit of conscience about my continued bachelorhood. In my village, she said confidently, leaning out from the carriage window, there is very comely young girl, a distant relative of mine. I shall speak to the parents. And then I said something which I had not considered before, which had never until that moment entered my head, and I was no less surprised than Leela when the words came tumbling out of my mouth. Why don't you marry me now? Arun did not have time to finish his story because just as this interesting stage, the dinner arrived. But the dinner brought it with the end of his story. It was served by his wife, a magnificent woman, strong and handsome, who could only have been Leela. And few minutes later, Chandu, Arun's stepson, charged into the house, complaining that he was famished. Arun introduced me to his wife and we exchanged the usual formalities. But why hasn't your friend brought with his family with him? She asked. Family? Because he's still a bachelor. And then, as he watched his wife's expression change from a look of mild indifference to one of deep concern, he hurriedly changed the subject.